Corporal Han Doyen stood at the observation window of the new Jeju colony, watching the twin moons rise over the distant mountains. The base was quiet tonight, as it usually was on the outer rim territories. Most colonists had gone to sleep, and only the night shift remained awake to monitor the systems. Doyen liked these quiet hours. They gave him time to think, to remember why he had volunteered for frontier duty. Earth was crowded, full of noise and people. Out here, a person could breathe. Out here, space felt truly infinite. His console beeped softly. Doyen glanced at the screen and frowned. The sensors had picked up something at the edge of the system. It was faint, barely registering, but definitely there. He tapped the screen to get a better reading. The signature was unusual, not like the cargo ships that occasionally passed through, and certainly not like the military vessels he had trained to recognize. This was something different, something organic, almost alive in the way it moved through space. Base Control, this is Patrol Station 7. Doyen spoke into his communicator. I'm picking up unknown contacts at the system edge. Please confirm. A moment of silence, then a woman's voice responded. Station 7, this is Dr. Park Jiwoo at Base Control. I'm seeing them too. Running analysis now. Doyen waited, his eyes fixed on the screen. More signatures appeared one by one, like stars waking up in the darkness. 5 ships. No 7, no 10. They kept coming. Doyen, can you get a visual? Park asked, her voice tense now. He adjusted the long-range cameras, pointing them toward the contacts. The image was grainy at first, but slowly sharpened. When it did, Doyen felt his breath catch in his throat. The ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. They looked grown rather than built, with smooth curves and what appeared to be skin instead of metal plating. Bone-white structures jutted from their hulls like spines. They moved with purpose, cutting through space in a perfect formation. Are you seeing this, Dr. Park? Doyen whispered. I'm seeing it. I'm waking Captain Yoon. Stay at your station. Doyen didn't need to be told twice. He watched the alien fleet approach, slow but steady. They weren't trying to hide. In fact, they seemed to want to be seen. 20 minutes later, Captain Yoon Taik arrived at the control center, still buttoning his uniform jacket. Dr. Park Jiwoo was already there, her fingers flying over the console as she tried to gather more information about the visitors. Report, Yoon said, his voice calm despite the situation. Park pointed at the main screen. 15 vessels, unknown design. They entered the system 40 minutes ago and have been approaching at steady speed. No response to our hailing signals, or could they be explorers? Yoon asked. Their formation suggests military discipline, Park replied. And look at this. She brought up an enhanced image of the lead ship. Those aren't sensor arrays. Those are weapons. Yoon studied the image carefully. He had served in the Colonial Defense Forces for 20 years and had seen many strange things in space. But nothing quite like this. Keep trying to make contact and send a priority message to Fleet Command. We might need backup. As if the aliens had heard him, the lead ship suddenly lit up. A holographic projection burst to life in the center of the control room, making everyone jump back in surprise. The figure that appeared was tall, easily over 2 meters. Its body was covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. 4 arms extended from its torso, each ending in razor-sharp claws. Its head was elongated, with multiple eyes arranged in a pattern that suggested it could see in all directions at once. When it opened its mouth, rows of crystalline teeth glinted. Primitive species, the alien said, its voice somehow translating into Korean. We are the Valkyrie. For 12,000 cycles we have traveled the stars seeking worthy prey. We have hunted the armored Dravek. We have claimed the toxic Solium. We have ended the Hive Lords who thought their numbers would save them. Yoon stepped forward, keeping his face neutral. I am Captain Yoon Taik of the new Jeju colony. We are humans. We come in peace. The alien's eyes seemed to focus on him all at once. It was an unsettling feeling. Peace is for prey that is given up. We do not seek your peace. We seek the hunt. The hunt? Park asked, unable to stop herself. Our sacred tradition, the Valkyrie continued. We study, we track, we claim. Your species has been selected. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no venom or telepathy. You are soft creatures who rely on tools. You will be an easy addition to our collection. The hologram expanded, showing images that made Doyen's stomach turn. Hundreds of alien species, all dead, all preserved in some kind of stasis. Trophies, that's what they were. Trophies from successful hunts. We grant you 7 solar rotations to prepare, the Valkyrie said. This is our tradition. Prey deserves a final chance to flee or fight. After 7 rotations, the hunt begins. Your species will be studied, cataloged, and preserved in our archives. That is the honor we bestow upon you. Wait, Yoon said, raising his hand. We can talk about this. We can find a peaceful solution. But the hologram was already fading. The Valkyri's last words echoed in the control room. There is no peace in the hunt, there is only predator and prey. We shall see which you truly are. The projection vanished, leaving the control room in shocked silence. Park was the first to speak. They're going to kill us. They're going to kill everyone. Yoon turned to face his team, his expression grim but determined. Not if we have anything to say about it. Park, I need you to analyze everything we just saw. Find their weaknesses. Find out how they operate. Doyen, get back to your station and watch their fleet. I want to know every move they make. What are you going to do, sir? Doyen asked. Yoon walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful colony. Families slept down there, children who had never known war, farmers who had come here to build a new life, workers who had left Earth seeking something better. I'm going to call for help, Yoon said quietly. And then I'm going to prepare these people for a fight. The Valkyri think we're easy prey. They think we're weak because we don't have claws or scales. He turned back to his team and there was fire in his eyes. They're about to learn that humanity didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being easy prey. We survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. We outlasted creatures bigger and stronger than us. If the Valkyri want a hunt, we'll give them one. But they might not like how it ends. Park nodded, already working at her console. Doyen returned to his station, his heart pounding but his hands steady. Outside, the Valkyri fleet hung in space, confident and patient. They had done this hundreds of times before. They had never failed. They had never lost. They had never hunted humans before. 7 days. That's all the time the colony had. 7 days to prepare for an enemy that had conquered the galaxy. 7 days to find a way to survive. The hunt was coming and nothing would ever be the same again. The first day after the Valkyri announcement was chaos. Captain Yoon called an emergency meeting of all colony leaders, and the news spread like fire through dry grass. Some people panicked, wanting to evacuate immediately. Others refused to believe it was real. Lieutenant Choi Hana stood in the military briefing room, studying the holographic display of the Valkyri ships. She was a tactical officer, trained to find solutions to impossible problems. This was definitely an impossible problem. The nearest fleet is 3 weeks away, she told Captain Yoon. Even if they left immediately, they wouldn't arrive in time. Then we prepare to defend ourselves, Yoon replied. Against that, Hana gestured at the image of the Valkyri warrior. Sir, they're physically superior to us in every way. Stronger, faster, better armed. According to Dr. Park's analysis, their scales can probably stop small arms fire. Dr. Park Ji-woo entered the room, carrying a tablet filled with data. She looked tired, having worked through the entire night. I analyzed the holographic transmission, she said. The Valkyri always study their prey first. They learn biological weaknesses before they attack. What kind of weaknesses? Yoon asked. Everything. Soft organs, blood chemistry, sensory limitations. They showed us images of hundreds of extinct species. Each one had advantages we don't have. Armor, weapons, size. But they all fell to the Valkyri. Hana leaned against the table. So what chance do we have? Park was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up with something like hope in her eyes. I noticed something. All those species they showed us, they were predictable. The armored ones relied on their armor. The poisonous ones relied on their poison. They each had one strategy. And humans, Yoon asked, we adapt, we learn. We change tactics when something doesn't work. That's how we survived on Earth. We weren't the strongest or fastest. We were the most creative. Kim Byung, the colony's maintenance chief, spoke up from the corner of the room. So you're saying we should make them think we're even weaker than we are? Make them overconfident? Park nodded slowly. Exactly. Feed them false data. Make them think we're helpless. Then hit them with things they don't expect. Yoon considered this. It was risky, but they didn't have many options. What do you need? Time to study them, Park said. We need to send someone to observe their fleet up close. Han Doyen volunteered immediately. He was the best pilot in the colony, and his small stealth shuttle could get close without being detected. Or at least that was the theory. 2 days later, Doyen found himself drifting silently through space, watching the Valkyri fleet from a distance of only 50 kilometers. His shuttle systems were running on minimal power, making him almost invisible to sensors. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Velkari ships were even more organic up close. They pulsed with life, their surfaces moving like breathing skin. But it was what he saw through the transparent sections that truly horrified him. Massive chambers filled with stasis pods. Each pod contained a creature perfectly preserved. Some were huge, bigger than any animal on Earth. Others were small but clearly intelligent, their faces frozen in expressions of fear or rage. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. This was the Velkari archive, the collection of every species they had hunted to extinction. Doyen recorded everything, his hands shaking slightly. These weren't just warriors. They were collectors preserving their kills like trophies. Humanity would be next, frozen forever in these horrible pods. He was about to retreat when movement caught his eye. A smaller Velkari ship was detaching from the main fleet, heading toward New Jeju. It was a scout vessel, probably carrying 1 or 2 hunters. Doyen opened his communicator on the secure channel. Base, this is Doyen. They're sending scouts. 1 ship heading your way. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Back at the colony, Captain Yoon received the message and immediately called his team together. If the Velkari were sending scouts, they wanted live specimens to study. That meant they would try to capture, not kill. We can use this, Hana said, already planning. Let them capture someone, but make sure that someone is prepared. You're talking about bait, Park said quietly. I'm talking about learning from them while they try to learn from us, Hana replied. The Velkari scout ship landed in the outer sectors of the colony 6 hours later, just as Doyun had predicted. The area had been partially evacuated with only a few people remaining. People who had volunteered. People who were ready. The scout that emerged from the ship was smaller than the Velkari commander they had seen in the hologram, but still impressive. His name was Threxus, though the humans wouldn't learn this until later. He moved through the empty streets with confidence, his multiple eyes scanning for life signs. He found them easily. Humans were loud creatures, broadcasting heat and noise wherever they went. He tracked a single human to a maintenance building and entered silently. The human was there, a young male apparently trying to repair some equipment. He looked up as Threxus entered and his face showed fear. Good. Prey should fear. The human ran, dropping his tools and fleeing deeper into the building. Threxus followed, amused. This was too easy. The human was slow, clumsy, leaving a clear trail. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and dark, but Threxus could see in the darkness. He followed the human's heat signature through turn after turn. Strange that the human had gone deeper instead of trying to escape outside. Fear made prey stupid. Then Threxus heard a sound behind him, and above him, and to both sides. The tunnels lit up suddenly, bright lights that burned his sensitive eyes. Before he could adjust, something heavy fell on him from above. A construction mech piloted by Kim Byung crashed down with enough force to crack even Velkari scales. Threxus roared and threw the mech off, but more attacks came. Industrial lasers meant for cutting metal sliced through the air. High-pressure water jets, normally used for cleaning, hit him with enough force to knock him back. The human he had been chasing appeared ahead of him. Not running now, Doyen stood with what looked like a mining tool modified into a weapon. You wanted to study us? Doyen said calmly. Study this. The tool fired, sending a pulse of electromagnetic energy that scrambled Threxus's sensory organs. Blind and disoriented, the Velkari scout stumbled backward into another trap. The floor beneath him opened and he fell into a pit filled with industrial coolant, freezing cold. By the time Threxus managed to climb out and escape back to his ship, he was wounded, confused, and afraid. Afraid. An emotion he had never felt during a hunt before. He barely made it back to the main fleet, his ship limping through space. When Commander Riva saw the state of his scout, he was furious. They are prey, Riva shouted. They have no natural weapons. How did they do this to you? Threxus, shivering from cold and shock, could only reply. They used everything. Their buildings, their tools, their environment. They turned their entire colony into a weapon. Sir, these humans, they don't fight like prey. They fight like hunters. Riva struck Threxus across the face for his cowardice. They are prey that got lucky. Nothing more. We will not be caught off guard again. But Elder Vorthax, the Velkari historian who accompanied the fleet to document the hunt, had watched the footage from Threxus's recorder. He saw something that disturbed him deeply. The humans had not fought with strength or natural weapons. They had fought with their minds. They had turned weakness into advantage, using tools and planning to defeat a physically superior enemy. Vorthax accessed the Velkari archives, searching through thousands of hunts. And he found a pattern. Every species they had conquered had relied on their natural advantages. When those advantages failed, they fell quickly. But humans had no natural advantages to rely on, which meant they would adapt constantly, unpredictably, dangerously. For the first time in his long life, Vorthax wondered if the Velkari had made a terrible mistake. Not because humans were strong, but because they were weak enough to have learned how to fight without strength. The hunt had only just begun, but already the rules were changing. Commander Riva decided to end the hunt quickly. The embarrassment of his scouts' defeat could not stand. On the 5th day, he sent down his warriors. 20 Velkari descended on New Jeju in armored drop pods that crashed into the colony like meteorites. Each warrior was a perfect killing machine, enhanced by genetic material from dozens of conquered species. They could see in darkness, track by scent, survive in vacuum. They were faster than any human, stronger, more durable. The colony should have fallen in hours. Instead, the Velkari found themselves in a nightmare that made no sense. Sergeant Baiksora crouched behind a collapsed wall, watching 3 Velkari warriors approach through the residential sector. She was small for a soldier, barely 160 centimeters tall, and lightly armed compared to the aliens. Her squad of 5 humans was hidden around the area, waiting. The Velkari moved confidently, believing their superior senses would detect any ambush. What they didn't detect was the network of thin wires Beck's team had strung between buildings the night before. Wires at ankle height, almost invisible. The lead Velkari triggered the trap. The wire snapped taut, connected to a deadfall system. Tons of concrete and metal debris, carefully positioned on a nearby roof, came crashing down. It didn't kill the warrior. His scales were too tough for that, but it buried him temporarily. Before his companions could react, Beck gave the signal. Her squad didn't shoot the remaining Velkari. Instead, they shot out the supports of the surrounding buildings. The Velkari warriors suddenly found themselves standing in a collapse zone as structures fell around them. They leaped away with incredible speed, but everywhere they jumped, more traps awaited. Pressure plates triggered acid from repurposed agriculture equipment. Motion sensors activated industrial cutting lasers. The humans didn't try to win the fight. They just made it too expensive to continue. After 5 minutes of chaos, the Velkari retreated, dragging their wounded with them. Beck watched them go, then spoke into her communicator. Zone 7 clear. 3 enemy wounded, 0 casualties on our side. Falling back to position 8. This pattern repeated across the colony. The Velkari would advance, confident and powerful. The humans would attack, retreat, and vanish. When the Velkari pursued, they found more traps, more ambushes, more surprises. In the agricultural domes, Dr. Park had turned the entire automated farming system into a weapon. Irrigation systems sprayed chemicals that burned Velkari skin. Harvesting machines, designed to cut crops, could just as easily cut through armor when modified. Even the grow lights could be overloaded to produce blinding flashes. The Velkari learned to avoid the domes. Then they learned the residential areas were just as dangerous. Then the industrial zones. Nowhere was safe. Nowhere was predictable. War Mistress Zilara, Commander Riva's second-in-command, was the first to understand what was happening. She had led assaults on 17 different species and had never seen anything like this. "Commander," she said, reviewing combat footage, "in their command ship, the humans are not trying to defeat us in battle." "Obviously," Riva growled. "They know they cannot." "No, you misunderstand. They are using persistence tactics. They are wearing us down." Riva scoffed. "We are Velkari. We do not tire. Don't we?" Zilara pulled up casualty reports. "We have lost 6 warriors to injuries. 12 more are wounded. They must rest and heal. Meanwhile, the humans rotate their fighters. When one group tires, another takes over. They never stop. They never give us time to consolidate our position. Riva studied the reports, his multiple eyes narrowing. She was right. The humans were fighting like they had infinite numbers, when in reality the colony only had 300 able fighters. But those 300 worked in shifts, supporting each other, covering each other's retreats. They are copying the tactics of the Dravik persistence hunters, Zilara continued, a species we wiped out 4,000 cycles ago. The Dravik were large and strong, Riva said. These humans are small and weak. The Dravik could run for days without stopping. These humans have vehicles and rotations. The principle is the same. They do not fight to kill. They fight to exhaust. On the ground, Lieutenant Hana executed her boldest plan yet. She allowed herself to be separated from her squad during a Velkari push, apparently caught in the open with no escape. A Velkari warrior, named Krex, captured her easily, binding her arms and dragging her toward a transport ship. She didn't resist much. Why would she? She was just a small human female, obviously terrified. Krex brought her aboard the ship and locked her in a holding cell, planning to return her to the fleet for study. Finally, the Velkari would be able to examine a live specimen properly. Hana waited until the ship was in flight, then reached into her hair and pulled out a thin piece of metal. Just a simple wire, the kind used in electronics. She had spent the previous day learning how to pick locks with nothing but basic tools, a skill humans had developed centuries ago for reasons having nothing to do with war. The cell door opened in 2 minutes. Hana moved silently through the ship. It was more organic than mechanical, which meant its systems were biological. She found the navigation center and studied it quickly. Velkari technology was advanced, but it followed logical principles. Everything did. She couldn't destroy the ship, but she could confuse it. She pulled wires, rerouted connections, and introduced contamination into the biological processors using nothing but her own saliva, which contained bacteria the Velkari systems couldn't process. The ship began to list, its navigation failing. Hana found an escape pod, programmed it with simple commands she figured out by watching the displays, and launched herself back toward the colony. Krex discovered her escape minutes later and roared in fury. The prey had turned the tables. The prey had outsmarted him. Impossible, but it had happened. Back at the Velkari fleet, Elder Vorthax was spending every waking moment in the archives, researching. What he found confirmed his fears. He called a meeting with War Mistress Zilara, knowing she would listen where Commander Riva would not. I have studied the combat footage carefully, Vorthax said, displaying holographic images. The humans are using tactics from multiple species. The persistence tactics of the Dravik, the trap-making of the Solium, the cooperation patterns of the Hive Lords, but they are not copying these tactics. They invented them independently. Convergent evolution? Zilara asked. No, something else. Humans evolved on a world where they were not apex predators. They were prey for millions of their years. They survived by learning to use everything around them as tools. They learned to cooperate in groups. They learned to outlast enemies they could not outfight. Vorthax pulled up an image of Earth, the human homeworld. This planet experienced multiple mass extinction events, ice ages that should have killed all complex life. Yet humans survived. Not by being strong, but by being adaptable. What are you saying, Elder? I am saying we may have hunted the wrong species. These humans, they appear weak. But weakness was their teacher. They learned lessons that we, as apex predators, never needed to learn. Zilara was quiet for a long moment. I must tell Commander Riva. He will not listen, then I will make him listen. Meanwhile, Technician Lim Junho monitored the communication systems, maintaining contact with the approaching human fleet. They were still 9 days away, but they were coming at maximum speed. Can we hold that long? He asked Captain Yoon. Yoon looked at the tactical display, showing human and Velkari positions across the colony. His people were tired, running on stimulants and determination, but they were holding. More than holding. They were making the Velkari pay for every meter of ground. We will hold, Yoon said firmly. Because we have no choice. That's what humans do. We find a way. Doyen returned from another scouting mission, his shuttle damaged but functional. Sir, their main fleet is staying back. I think they are afraid of our defenses. Good, Yoon replied. Let them be afraid. Let them wonder what else we have prepared. In truth, they were running out of tricks. The colony had been turned into a fortress of improvised weapons and traps, but resources were finite. The Velkari would realize eventually that humanity was surviving on clever planning more than actual strength. But by then, maybe it would be too late. Maybe the Velkari would have learned the lesson that had taken humanity millions of years to learn. The weak can win, not by becoming strong, but by refusing to quit. Commander Riva had heard enough. His warriors were being humiliated by weak creatures with no natural weapons. The hunt was taking too long and costing too much. It was time to end this. He deployed the Apex warriors. These were not normal Velkari soldiers. They were genetic masterpieces enhanced with DNA from dozens of extinct species. Each Apex warrior cost more resources than an entire warship and took years to create. Riva had brought 5 of them on this hunt, never imagining he would need them against such pathetic prey. Now all 5 descended on New Jeju like gods of war. The first Apex warrior had thermal vision from the Skorathi, a species that hunted in volcanic worlds. The second had echolocation from the Vrel, cave dwellers who could see in perfect darkness. The third had chemical sensing from the Poison Lords. The fourth had electromagnetic detection from the Storm Seekers. The fifth had all of these and more. They were perfect hunters. Unstoppable killers. They would end this farce. Han Doyen watched the Apex warriors land from his hidden position, and for the first time since the hunt began, he felt true fear. These things were different. Bigger, faster, more dangerous than anything they had faced. He opened his communicator. Captain, we have a problem. In the command center, Captain Yoon watched the feed from Doyen's camera. He saw the Apex warriors tear through a defensive position in seconds, their power overwhelming the human defenders. 3 soldiers died before they could even retreat. Dr. Park was already at her console, analyzing. They are using abilities from extinct species. I am seeing thermal tracking, sound mapping, chemical trails. Can we counter them? Yoon asked. Park's fingers flew across her keyboard. Maybe. If they are using abilities from species the Velkari already hunted, those abilities must have had weaknesses. That is why those species lost. Lieutenant Hana entered, her armor scorched from a close encounter with one of the Apex warriors. We need something better than traps and tricks. Those things are too smart and too fast. Then we use their intelligence against them, Park said. She pulled up files on extinct species, cross-referencing Velkari archive data that Doyen had recorded. The Skorathi saw in thermal. That means they were vulnerable to heat saturation. If we flood an area with heat sources, the Apex warrior using Skorathi abilities will be blind. The Vrel used echolocation, Hana continued, catching on. Loud noises or conflicting echoes would confuse them. Yoon nodded slowly. We cannot fight them directly, but we can make their enhanced senses worthless. Bayek, can you set this up? Sergeant Bayek Sora was already planning. Give me 2 hours. Meanwhile, on the Velkari command ship, something unexpected happened. Supreme Hunter Krathis arrived from the Velkari homeworld, summoned by reports of the troubled hunt. Krathis was ancient, having led hunts for over 300 cycles. He had personally ended 70 species. He watched the combat footage with cold, analytical eyes. Commander Riva stood at attention, expecting praise for deploying the Apex warriors. Instead, Krathis said, "You are losing." Impossible, Riva protested. We have superior numbers, superior weapons, superior biology. And yet you are losing, Krathis repeated. Not in the way you understand. You are winning battles but losing the hunt. Each victory costs more than it gains. The humans are bleeding you slowly. The Apex warriors will end this. Will they? Krathis pulled up casualty reports. You have lost warriors. You have lost ships. You have lost pride. This hunt should have ended in 1 day. It has been 9 days. The humans have reinforcements arriving soon. You have achieved nothing but proof that we can be resisted. Riva's scales darkened with shame and anger. But he could not argue. On the colony surface, Private Kang Wu prepared for a mission he knew he would not survive. He was young, barely 20 Earth years, but he understood what needed to be done. Dr. Park had discovered something critical. The Velkari ships were partially biological, their systems connected by organic neural networks. She had developed a virus, a piece of code that affected living tissue. It would spread through their fleet like a disease, causing system failures, but someone had to deliver it directly to a Velkari capital ship. The virus could not be transmitted remotely. It needed to be uploaded physically, Kang volunteered. He loaded the virus onto a data core, sealed it in protective casing, and climbed into a small cargo shuttle that had been modified to look damaged. "Tell my family I did something that mattered," Kang said to Captain Yoon. "I will tell them you saved us all." Yoon replied quietly. Kang launched, broadcasting a fake distress signal. The Velkari ships detected him immediately. A damaged shuttle with a living human inside? Perfect for capture and study. They brought his shuttle aboard a capital ship using a tractor beam. Kang waited until he was inside the hangar, then activated the virus upload. The data core connected wirelessly to the ship's biological systems and released the virus. Then Kang set his shuttle to self-destruct. He had no illusions about escape. But if this worked, his death would mean something. The explosion was small, barely damaging the Velkari hangar. But the virus spread through the ship's organic systems like wildfire. Biological processors began to fail. Neural connections misfired. Within minutes, the capital ship's weapons went offline. Its shields collapsed. Its life support became unstable. And because Velkari ships shared data constantly through organic links, the virus spread to other ships. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. Within an hour, half the Velkari fleet was crippled. On the ground, the Apex warriors suddenly found their enhanced abilities worthless. Beck's teams had prepared perfectly. When the Skarathi-enhanced warrior entered a building, humans activated hundreds of heat sources from simple fires to overloaded electronics. The thermal vision showed everything as hot, making it impossible to track targets. When the Vrel-enhanced warrior used echolocation, humans activated sonic disruptors, creating so many conflicting echoes that the warrior became disoriented. The Poison Lord warrior tried to track by chemical scent, but humans had contaminated the area with thousands of different chemicals, overwhelming its senses. One by one, the Apex warriors fell. Not to superior strength, but to environmental warfare that made their advantages into disadvantages. Doyen led the final assault on the last Apex warrior, the one with combined abilities. They lured it into a sealed chamber, then flooded the room with smoke, loud noise, chemicals, heat, and electromagnetic interference all at once. The warrior was powerful, but its enhanced senses became torture chambers. It could see too much, hear too much, smell too much. When it finally collapsed from sensory overload, Doyen stood over it with a simple mining laser. "You were built to be the perfect hunter," he said. "But you hunted humans. We do not fight fair. We fight to win." Back on the command ship, Elder Vorthax witnessed everything. He turned to War Mistress Solara with an expression close to awe. "Do you see? The humans did not just counter the Apex warriors. They turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses. This is not luck. This is evolution. This is what survival looks like when a species spends millions of years being hunted instead of hunting." Solara nodded slowly. "What do we do?" "We stop the hunt," Vorthax said firmly, "before we lose more than pride." But Commander Riva, watching his fleet fail and his Apex warriors fall, could not accept defeat. He would not. He prepared his personal armor and weapons, calling together his remaining warriors. "We end this now," Riva declared. "I will personally lead an assault on their command center. We will kill their leaders and break their resistance." "Commander, our fleet is damaged," Solara protested. "We should withdraw and reassess." "We are Velkari," Riva roared. "We do not withdraw. We do not reassess, we hunt." He launched toward the colony, leading 50 warriors in a final, desperate assault. If he could kill Captain Yoon and destroy the human leadership, the colony would collapse. But as his drop pod crashed into the colony center, Riva found something waiting for him that made his blood run cold. Every remaining human defender stood in formation. Tired, wounded, but unbroken, and standing at their center was Captain Yoon, holding nothing but a simple radio. "Velkari Commander," Yoon said calmly, "your fleet is disabled. Your Apex warriors are defeated. Your hunt has failed. I'm giving you one chance to leave this world alive. Take it, Riva laughed, a horrible sound. You think your words frighten me? I have ended worlds. I will end you. No, Yoon replied. You will not. Because my reinforcements just arrived. Riva looked up. In the sky above, human warships emerged from faster-than-light travel. Dozens of them, weapons charged and targeting the Velkari fleet. The hunt was over. The Velkari had lost. Admiral Song Mirai stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking down at the damaged Velkari fleet. She had arrived expecting to find a colony in ruins, maybe a few survivors hiding in shelters. Instead, she found the colony standing and the Velkari crippled. Status report, Song ordered. The Velkari fleet has 17 ships, ma'am. 12 are damaged by some kind of biological virus. 5 are still operational but holding position. They are not attacking. Song studied the tactical display. The Velkari were legendary, unstoppable hunters who had erased hundreds of species from existence. Yet here they sat, disabled by a colony of 3,000 humans with improvised weapons. Open a channel to the Velkari command ship, Song said. Let us see if they want to talk. On the planet's surface, Commander Riva stared up at the human fleet, his mind refusing to accept reality. This was wrong. Prey did not defeat predators. Weak creatures did not outlast the strong. The entire natural order of the universe was being violated before his eyes. Captain Yoon watched the Velkari commander carefully. The alien was dangerous, wounded pride making him unpredictable. Around them, human soldiers kept their weapons ready, though everyone knew those weapons would barely scratch Velkari scales. Riva looked at Yoon with all his eyes at once. How? He asked simply. You gave us 7 days to prepare, Yoon replied. So we prepared. You studied us and saw weakness. You were right. Humans are weak compared to you, but you made a mistake. You thought weakness was the same as vulnerability. It is the same, Riva growled. No, Yoon said firmly. Humans have been weak since we first stood upright on Earth. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor or poison. There were hundreds of predators stronger than us. They should have eaten us to extinction, but they did not. Do you know why? Riva said nothing, but his posture showed he was listening. Because we learned that weakness is not the end. It is the beginning. When you cannot fight an enemy directly, you find another way. When you cannot outrun danger, you outlast it. When you have no natural weapons, you make weapons from everything around you. Millions of years of being prey taught us to survive through adaptation. Yoon gestured to the colony around them, battered but standing. You came here to hunt us. You thought it would be easy. You were stronger, faster, better armed. You should have won. But we had something you lost a long time ago. We had the knowledge of what it means to fight when you are weak. We had the desperation of prey that refuses to die. A transmission came through on Riva's communicator. It was Admiral Song offering terms. The Velkari could leave with their archive ship intact. In exchange, they would end the hunt permanently and share their genetic data with humanity. Riva wanted to refuse, to fight until death. But War Mistress Zilara spoke through the channel. Commander, our fleet is disabled. Supreme Hunter Krathis has ordered withdrawal. The hunt is over. The hunt is never over, Riva said, but his voice lacked conviction. This one is, Zilara replied. Dr. Park Jiwoo approached carrying a data tablet. She looked exhausted, her clothes stained with chemicals and blood from treating wounded soldiers, but her eyes were bright with something like triumph. Commander Riva, Park said politely, you wanted to add humanity to your archives. To classify us like you classified hundreds of other species. She held up the tablet showing a genetic profile. I took the liberty of preparing your report for you. Riva looked at the data despite himself. Species designation, Homo sapiens, Park read. Classification, persistence predator. Natural weapons, none. Natural armor, none. Natural advantages, none. Special ability, adaptability. Can learn from any situation, any enemy, any environment. Threat assessment, previously classified as minimal. Reclassified as apex survivor. She looked up at the Velkari commander. You hunted hundreds of species. Each one was stronger than us in some way, but they all had one weakness. They relied on what evolution gave them. When those advantages failed, they had nothing else. Humans never had evolution's advantages, so we learned to create our own advantages from whatever was available. You cannot archive that. You cannot study it in a laboratory. It is not biological. It is who we are. Elder Vorthax emerged from a Velkari transport, moving slowly with age. He approached the group and performed a gesture that made every Velkari present gasp. He lowered himself onto one knee, a position of submission that no Velkari elder had performed in thousands of years. "Humans of Earth," Vorthax said, his voice carrying strange harmonics. "I am Elder Vorthax, keeper of the hunt's history. I have witnessed 300 hunts. I have seen species with armor that could withstand starship weapons, species with telepathy that could control entire armies, species with technology that bent space and time. All fell to the Velkari because they relied on what made them strong." He looked at the humans around him, these small, fragile creatures who should have been the easiest prey. "You survived because you never had strength to rely on. Where other species had single adaptations, you had infinite adaptation. You are what the Velkari should have become. You are what we lost when we became apex predators." Supreme Hunter Krathus appeared via hologram, transmitted from the Velkari homeworld. He was massive, even for a Velkari, covered in scars from countless hunts. His presence demanded respect. "Captain Yoon of the humans," Krathus said. "Commander Riva of the Velkari. The hunt is ended by my decree. The humans have proven themselves not as prey, but as the pinnacle species. They represent what all intelligent life should aspire to become, not the strongest but the most adaptable. Not apex predators, but apex survivors." Riva's scales turned dark with shame, but he did not protest. Krathus continued, "The Velkari Empire will end the practice of the hunt. We will release the genetic archives of extinct species to humanity, so that what we destroyed might be remembered and perhaps restored. We will learn from humans as we should have learned from the species we erased." Admiral Song accepted the terms, knowing this was the best outcome. The Velkari were not defeated enemies to be humiliated. They were future allies who needed to be shown a different path. Over the following weeks, the Velkari fleet departed, leaving behind data cores containing genetic information from hundreds of extinct species. Dr. Park received them with reverence, knowing this was a sacred trust. Han Doyun stood with Sergeant Beck, Lieutenant Hana, and others who had survived the hunt, watching the alien ships leave. "Do you think they will really change?" Doyun asked. "Does it matter?" Beck replied. "We showed them that apex predators can be beaten. That is enough." 5 years passed. The galaxy was different now. The Velkari Empire had transformed from hunters to explorers, studying life instead of ending it. Their first joint project with humanity was the resurrection of the Dravek species, using genetic data from the archives and biotechnology that humans had developed. When the first Dravek opened their eyes after 12,000 years of extinction, the creature looked up at the humans and Velkari standing together, and asked a simple question in a language long dead. "Why did you bring us back?" Dr. Park, now heading the Galactic Species Preservation Institute, smiled. "Because we learned that strength is not about dominating others. It is about protecting what is precious. You are precious. Every species is." Doyen, promoted to major, served as a liaison officer on a joint human-Velkari exploration ship. He worked alongside former enemies, teaching them human tactics and learning Velkari biology. The combination of human adaptability and Velkari strength made for effective exploration teams. Captain Yoon had retired from military service, but occasionally gave lectures at military academies across human space. His most famous speech always ended the same way. "The Velkari came to hunt us because we were weak. They saw creatures with no claws, no fangs, no armor. They thought we would be easy prey. They were right about our weakness. But they did not understand what weakness teaches. When you cannot win by strength, you learn to win by thinking. When you cannot survive by fighting, you learn to survive by adapting. When you have nothing, you learn to use everything." Yoon would gesture to his students, seeing humanity's future in their faces. "You are not the strongest species in the galaxy. You never will be. But you are the survivors. You are the ones who refuse to quit. That is humanity's pinnacle. Not the pinnacle of power, but the pinnacle of persistence. Remember that, and you will never truly be defeated." On the Velkari homeworld, Elder Vorthax maintained a new archive. Not an archive of the dead, but an archive of the living. Every species humanity helped resurrect was documented, studied, protected. The galaxy was slowly filling with life again. Species that the Velkari had erased now given second chances. Vorthax often thought about the hunt that changed everything. The hunt that failed, The hunt that taught the Velkari they were not as evolved as they believed. He had added one final entry to the old archives, marking the last species the Velkari tried to hunt. The entry was simple: species, Homo sapiens, hunted by 17 ships and 100 warriors. Result: hunt failed. Velkari casualties 73, human casualties 42. Conclusion: humans defeated Velkari not through superior biology but through superior adaptation. They showed us that evolution's greatest gift is not strength, but the ability to change. They are the